Okay, everybody, welcome to this information session about an exciting new program at the University of British Columbia, the Master of Urban Forestry Leadership. And I could see in the list of participants a few familiar faces, so it's good to see many people from the industry, but also from different parts of the world joining us. So this session, which will last up to an hour, will include a brief presentation of the program that I will give together with my colleague Lee Yupitin. And Lee is actually the expert mostly on some of the issues related to enrollment, tuition, and things like that. And I'm, of course, focusing very much on the content. My name is Cecil Konijnendijk. Some of you know me. I'm a professor of urban forestry at UBC, but my primary role this time is actually to be the leader, the director of this new exciting master program, professional master program. So what we'll do today is that I'll let Lee introduce herself as well, and then she will take you through a little bit of background information about the university and the agenda, and then I will take over to talk about the program, and then Lee will come back to talk a little bit more about some of the administrative issues. So Lee, thanks for joining us. Would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Thanks, Cecil. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining from. And my name is Lee Yupitin. I'm the admissions coordinator for MUFL and also the MGEM program. But for this session, I'll focus on the Master of Urban Forestry Leadership. After this presentation, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to contact me at forestry.cbm@ubc.ca. And yeah, like Cecil said, we are going to go over the agenda briefly. And if we could get the next slide, thanks, Ben. So I'll just spend a few minutes going over the UBC and Faculty of Forestry, and then Cecil will speak more about the program and the career opportunities. And I'll wrap up the presentation with information on how to apply tuition and funding. And there'll also be an opportunity at the end of the session for questions and answers. So feel free to type in your questions in the chat box. Next. So UBC is a global center for research and teaching and consistently ranked among the top 20 public universities in the world. And this photo is a picture of one of our libraries, the Irving Barber Learning Center, which is in Vancouver. UBC has two campuses, the Point Grey campus in Vancouver, as well as the Okanagan campus in Kelowna. UBC has close to 67,000 students, with almost 56,000 students at the Vancouver campus. Next, please. The UBC Faculty of Forestry is ranked in the top 3 forestry schools in the world. We have over 1,500 students, of which over 300 students are graduate students. And as you can see in this picture, on the left-hand side is a photo of the outside of our building, the Forest Sciences Center, and on the right is a picture of the beautiful atrium inside our building. Next. This program will be delivered 100% online with benefits such as a flexible schedule and freedom to study from anywhere in the world as long as you have internet and access to a computer. You can also learn at your own pace with on-demand learning and extend your network with an international cohort. And here's the program director, Cecil, to speak more about the program.
Thanks very much, Lee. And as you all can imagine, of course, we are living in somewhat challenging times. So one of the decisions to go fully online for the first year that we're teaching the program, of course, has to do with the current COVID pandemic. We are not entirely sure yet, and I know some of you are wondering if the program will be fully online also beyond the first year. But we have had some reactions from many interested students that actually prefer some form of online delivery, which would give more flexibility and would mean that people wouldn't have to move to Vancouver. But as I said, we're still debating a little bit how we will do that in the future. The one thing we know for sure that the next year it will be fully online. So if we could look at the next slide, please. So this is an interesting type of program. So our faculty, the Faculty of Forestry, has several of these what we call professional master programs or course-based master programs. So these are really geared up for, let's say, professionals in the field who are eager to upgrade their knowledge, maybe to shift their focus a bit, and do that in an interesting cohort of like-minded students. And typically, in our case, for sure, this will be people that have quite some experience in the field. So there will be a lot of cohort learning, as we call it, a lot of peer learning. It's a 14-month program that would start in July in the summer. So there will be one course taught in July and August, an introduction course on urban greening, urban forestry, and that will be followed then by a 12-month curriculum after that. And the overall idea of the program is really to provide an interdisciplinary perspective of urban forestry with a very strong focus on leadership and strategic management. So as some of you who are working in the field know, there's really a big call these days for people who are strategic thinkers and who can lead interdisciplinary teams in urban forestry, green infrastructure, but also related fields. And we're really trying to meet that demand that comes from many cities across the world, but also other potential employers for delivering people with a new type of knowledge and skill set. Next, please. So you will wonder when you see this, these four symbols, hands-on experience in an online program. What is that? What is that going to mean? Well, we're actually designing our courses in a way that there will be quite a lot of interaction with the actual urban forestry, urban green space out where you are in your part of the world. Moreover, and I'll talk a little bit more about that soon, there's a CAPSTONE course at the end of the program that will give you the opportunity to work with an urban forestry organization, and which actually gives you a chance to build or to use some of your knowledge and skills in a CAPSTONE project. That could be, for example, for your own employer, if that will work out, or it could also be for another organization if you're more interested in that. We, of course, want you to expand your professional toolkit. And that basically means that we want you to deep dive into some of the latest knowledge in our field in urban forestry, but then also to really up your leadership and entrepreneurial skills and project management skills. And I'll give you an example of the courses in a bit. This is also very unique, of course, because we're bringing together a cohort of current and future leaders in our field in urban forestry. So these are people from all over the world, and actually looking at the participant list right now, people from many different countries that have signed up for this information session. And that's really also the spirit of the program. We are based in Vancouver, but the program is highly international. So we really want people from all over the world that have similar interests to join into this learning environment. And one of the big perks, I think, of the program is that we're really able to bring to you some of the leaders in the urban forestry field today, but also leaders in fields like leadership, natural resource management, economics, and so we can really give you some of the best available minds to spar with and to learn from. Next, please. So, of course, many of you joining this session will probably wonder, is the program right for you? So I'll give you a little bit more information about the program, what we are aiming for. So it's a professional degree program, which is really aimed, as I mentioned, at producing creative leaders who understand this vital role that green spaces, trees, natural elements in general play in the cities that we have today, but also the future cities. And of course, we know today with for example, the COVID pandemic, also with climate change emergency, etc., that there is a huge demand for really well-planned green spaces and urban forests. And this demand actually has not really been met, I would dare to say, by capacity in terms of the people who can take care of the resource. And also we'll need people who can think across boundaries, who can work in these teams that might not only have green people in them, but also, for example, engineers or planners or public health professionals. People who can also relate to the political context that we're operating in, and who can really see the strategic benefit of having green space in city for all the different benefits they provide. But of course also know about the limitations that trees and green spaces have. So of course we have to properly manage them and not to, let's say, raise the expectations sometimes too high. We have to still be realistic about what is possible to do with our resource. Next, please. So there is really this need for a new type of professional and green leader, as I mentioned, and there's no doubt. And we have, of course, done quite some work with potential employers, both in Canada and the US, Europe, and other places. And this is really a recurring theme. We really would like to have people who are ready to take up this challenge. It's really for people who have that ambition. So you may be at a stage in your career where you already are providing leadership or managerial tasks. You also might feel that this is maybe the time for you to move up and actually start doing it. Or maybe you have an idea that you want to move from your current organization to another one where you would actually benefit from having leadership and coordination skills. All are welcome, but we really want to focus on people who have already done a few years of work in urban forestry, but also in related fields. And that could be, as I mentioned earlier, fields like planning, obviously arboriculture, horticulture, landscape architecture, but the list is really not limited to those. So those of you who will enroll for the program or will try to apply for it, we will ask you to write a motivation letter to show how your profile and your ambitions really fit into this field. And we want to carefully then pick a great cohort of students who actually are different as well in their approaches, because that will actually foster a better learning environment. Next, please. So what are you going to learn? Many of you, of course, very curious to hear about that. So if we look at the next slide here, we'll give you a little bit of insight in that. Obviously, we want you to apply a strategic mindset into this environment of urban forest planning and management, green infrastructure planning, etc. Many of you already understand the roles and benefits of green space and trees in cities, obviously, but we want you to be able to use the most state-of-art knowledge on that. And also, as I mentioned earlier, to be able to transfer that knowledge into planning and decision-making contexts. And then, of course, we want to train you as well in project planning processes, especially when we have these very complex situations with team members from many different fields, with different levels of political decision-making, etc. And that really relates, of course, also to things like economy, budgets, marketing, dealing with different audiences, etc. And of course, very important for urban forestry is the communications side of things. So we definitely will have a lot of focus on building and training your communication skills as well. Next, please. So these are the courses that are on the program. And as I mentioned already, some of these courses will be a deep dive into the state of art of urban forestry today, starting with an introduction course to bring everybody up to speed on what we mean with urban forestry, what the approach is that we use in the program. But then there will be courses on geomatics in an urban forestry context. There will be a specific course on governance processes, decision-making, public engagement, etc. There will be a course on advances in arboriculture and urban ecology. We will have an assessment course, urban forest resources and benefits. There will be a course that connects some of these higher level decision-making with on-the-ground urban forestry and strategic urban forest planning and management. And then there's this CAPSTONE course that I will say a little bit more about. And then on the other hand, and parallel to this, you will also be getting courses in things like leadership and sustainability, project management, project proposal development and proof of concept. Of course, many of us know this is really important in our field, but also entrepreneurship and policy analysis. And here we have teamed up with other faculties at UBC. So the public policy people at UBC who are really skilled in that part of things, and then especially also the Sauder School of Business, who are one of North America's leading business schools. So they will really bring in that strong business and leadership dimension into the program as well. We think that this kind of unique combination of skill sets and knowledge will really create a different program, and a program that really will meet current demands. Next, please. So I mentioned already this CAPSTONE project. So the idea here is really that you will bring all your knowledge together. You'll actually have a course during the initial stages of the program that will prepare you for your CAPSTONE. And this is almost like a miniature thesis or proof of practice project. So you will take up a specific challenge that could be in your own organization, if you prefer that. It could also be another organization where you will work on a small research project, a management planning project, or something different that has to do with urban forestry. And we will, of course, help you to be teamed up not only with your client or your employers, but also with a team of mentors from the program that will actually help you as you finalize this last part of the program. And the idea is then, COVID pending, that we will bring everybody together in Vancouver actually to present the CAPSTONE projects, and also to be able to learn from each other and have a panel of experts reflect on some of your learning experiences. So even in this online program, there will be an opportunity to meet your fellow classmates, as said, pending the current pandemic. But let's hope that vaccines and so are well underway by then. Next, please. So you may be also interested in who your teachers are. Well, don't worry, it's not just going to be me teaching you. We have a really nice lineup of people who have already committed to the program. Here are just some of the faces, both of teachers, like Laurie Nesbitt, you'll see there on the top left. But we also have a series of contributors who have already agreed to to contribute to parts of the program. People like Professor Peter Duinker, Professor Alan Simpson from the UK, but also Dr. Johan Östberg, who is an expert in urban forest management from Sweden. And also people like Mac Hanna from the city of Montreal, who will bring in a very strong practical flavor of urban forestry as well. And then we have some very young, talented people like Corey Bassett and Cindy Chang, who are graduates or current graduate students in our own program, but also come with a lot of practical experience in urban forestry and arboriculture. And then people like Justin Bull there on the right, left, who come with a very strong economics and leadership profile. And I should also mention that we have some really experienced urban forestry leaders like Owen Croy, hidden there between First Nations art, who will also be teaching courses like the Urban Forest Governance course. So I'm personally very excited to be able to work with a team of urban forestry leaders and leadership experts that is so qualified as this team. And if I were in another situation, I will probably start enrolling in this program because I really would like to learn from all these different people. Next, please. So of course you're interested. It's a big step to enroll in a program like this, a 40-month commitment, and of course also a financial commitment. So what are some of the career opportunities? And of course, before we were able to get this program approved in British Columbia, we had to show and demonstrate that there's really a need for graduates. And we saw cities in British Columbia, as well as in other parts of North America and elsewhere, really mentioning that there is a kind of a gap in some of the skills and expertise that they see in people who are coming into their, let's say, more green leadership positions. A lot of these positions have emerged during recent years, and they simply don't always have the people to fill them. So we also see, of course, an increasing interest in green space and sustainability questions in general. We see leadership opportunities to advance green leadership in general as one of the emerging fields. And I mean, issues like climate change, etc., of course, are becoming very important. Also, we feel that graduates in the program will be able actually to develop skill sets and knowledge that will be transferable between different contexts. So some of you may currently work in a specific city, specific country, but may have an ambition to move to another place at some stage. And we will definitely make sure there's an international cohort with skill sets that will be, as I mentioned, transferable between different contexts. Next, please. So some of the people that we have been consulting with include leaders like the president of the Society of Municipal Arborists, which is probably the leading organization for municipal arborists, urban foresters in North America, Darren Green. And he clearly stated in his letter of support for the program that he sees this need for urban forestry professionals that are leaders, that are really able to lead and to push green forests through green initiative forward in North American cities. Next, please. So what are people saying about the program? Of course, while in this whole process of setting up and getting ideas for what people from the industry would think, we have some feedback that they share with us. Next, please. So our own dean at the Faculty of Forestry, John Innes, who has been a strong proponent of urban forestry, he really he sees that need. As somebody who has worked in forestry for many decades, he really sees this urge for natural resource professionals to move to cities and to talk about things like public health. What are the benefits that green spaces provide to health and well-being? And said the whole COVID pandemic has shown us, of course, the importance of nearby green space and of having the chance to relieve some of our stress and get some necessary exercise, as well as inspiration from nature. But also climate change, as I mentioned. And of course, also issues like biodiversity, creativity, education. These are all linked, of course, to urban forestry, air pollution reduction, etc. So we'll make sure that we bring all these aspects into the mix when we talk about leadership profiles as well. Next, please. And then Owen Croy, who I have the pleasure of co-teaching the Urban Forest Governance project with as well. Here representing the Municipal Forestry Institute, which is a one-week leadership course that many of us are familiar with. He also says that this is really a well-timed program because people take leadership courses. Some of them are generic, so they will be building your general leadership skills. Some of them are maybe more green focused, but often short, like a couple of days. But this program will really give you a chance to deep dive into leadership skills in a specific urban forest and green space context. It's the first program of its kind in this way that actually leads to a full graduate degree as well at the end. Next, please. So I think, Lee, maybe it's good to hear a bit more about some of the requirements and how people can apply if they would be interested.
Thanks, Cecil. Next slide, please. So we will go over the minimum requirements for this program and also speak a little bit about the academic background that we're looking for. Applicants should have a relevant field such as urban forestry, landscape architecture, ecology, conservation, planning, geography, public health, or engineering degree. And for minimum academic requirements, students who are applying from US and Canada, we're looking for a 4-year bachelor's degree with a minimum overall B plus range in 3rd and 4th year courses. So this is equivalent to 76% at UBC. For those who are applying from international countries, they're looking at the overall degree, so not just the senior level courses. And the minimum requirements are set by Faculty of Grad Studies. So for more information on the country's minimum requirement, please visit their webpage. We have the link there. And this presentation, I believe, is also going to be emailed to all the students who've registered, or everyone who's registered for this webinar. And for further information on the admission requirements, please also visit our webpage that's listed here, pm.forestry.ubc.ca. Next, please. Applicants applying from a university outside Canada and the US in which English is not the primary language of instruction will be required to provide the English language proficiency test as part of your application. The 2 most common tests we see are TOEFL and IELTS, and the minimum scores that we require are also listed on our admissions webpage under the English language requirement. Next, please. So the application portal is now open for applications, and in order to apply, you must complete the online application and pay the application fee. Also, please provide scanned copies of official transcripts for all post-secondary institutions that you have attended. And please list 3 references, with one of them being an academic reference. If you're using any emails, please avoid using Hotmail, Yahoo accounts, because the application portal will not accept those emails. So preferably an institutional email or their professional email. And also please encourage them to upload reference letters through the portal instead of mailing in a hard copy of the letters, because we're not working in the office currently. So it'd be better to have it by e-copies. And also if they can send in their English, if you can send in their English language proficiency test if needed. There's also a MUFL questionnaire that is built into the online application. This is an opportunity for you to speak about your background experience and also potential capstone project that you'd be interested in, and also include a letter of intent and CV with your application. Next, please. So the deadline for all the supporting documents and application to our office is March 18th for the July 2021 intake. And Faculty of Grad Studies also has a really good list of FAQs that they share for prospective students. So I encourage you to visit their website, which is, the link is available there. And it'll provide some tips and tricks on how to prepare your application. Next, please. And next, we're going to go over the tuition and funding for this program. So the tuition you see here is actually for the fees that were the tuition fees for 2018-19 academic year. The most current fees for 2021 will not be available until February when it's published in the academic calendar, but it will be probably a little bit higher than these tuition, because in the past the Board of Governors have reviewed these tuition fees, and the increases have there's been about 2% increase for domestic students and between 2 to 5% increase for international students. So as you can see there, it's close to 20,000. It's 20,000 per year right now for domestic and 35,000 for international students. The tuition is payable in 4 equal installments at the beginning of July, September, January, and May. And there's also a non-refundable deposit of $1,000, which is payable upon acceptance. Next. And for more information on our tuition and funding, it can be found on this link provided. We had questions before about whether or not there are scholarships for this program, and there are not many scholarships for our professional master's programs. There are a few, but it's primarily funded by students. So I'd encourage you to look at the links here for more information. Next, please. And this concludes our presentation. So I see that we have some questions in the chat box. And so I will go through and read some of these questions. But please continue to write your questions in the chat. I see there's a question here. Are there linkages between MUFL and SALA? SALA is the School of Architecture and Landscape Architecture programs at UBC. Faculty, interdisciplinary projects, resources, etc.
Yes, maybe Lee, I can answer that. So for our undergrad program, yeah, the Bachelor of Urban Forestry, we actually have a very strong collaboration with SALA. So we have actually some SALA courses that are taught within the Urban Forestry program. And similarly for this program, in the design process, we had representation from SALA in the steering group. So we definitely will have crossovers. We will have joint activities. We have some really excellent colleagues at SALA that have already expressed interest to teach, be part of our courses. So I definitely expect this to happen. And we know, of course, landscape architecture and urban forestry are two fields that really have to collaborate. So we'll work hard to have strong connections.
Thanks, Cecil. And the next question is from Virginia. With regards to the capstone course, are relationships already established with consultants? For instance, engineering firms recruit engineering students. Do you anticipate a similar interest in working with MUFL students?
Yeah, so we have definitely started that process already, and we during the whole design and application process, we've had a lot of contacts with companies and with municipalities in Canada, in the US, but also elsewhere. And of course, over the next period, we're going to solidify some of these relations, so that we have a good list of companies and municipalities lined up that are willing to take on our students. And of course, we hope to come in a situation also where some of these would then be interested actually in recruiting, hiring some of our graduates after the capstone, for example.
Great. Next question from John. Does ISA certification general/municipal specialist factor as a benefit to applicants?
Yes, I think the short answer would be yes. So I think anything that can be brought in the application package that relates to relevance, experience in the field, and of course degrees are one thing. But apart from degrees, we also look at people's professional experience in related field or in urban forestry. We look at things like certification. So everything will be weighed in as we bring together our first cohort of students. So definitely.
And the next question, do you have any information about demand from industry or government contacts?
Yes, we do. We have primarily been working in this case with cities, but actually also with some governments, national governments in different parts of the world. And the good thing is that our teacher team is extremely international, so we are not limiting ourselves to Canada or the US. We see the biggest demand right now in cities. So cities like Vancouver, but also cities like New York, for example, they've really expressed this desire to expand their staff resources with people with these kind of skill sets. So of course, the next step is always to see that they not only say this, but also actually start taking on students. But I'm really optimistic that there is really a lack of people with this kind of profile that people, cities, companies, NGOs, and so would like to hire.
Great, thanks. And the next question is about a language requirement, which I could probably answer. If I don't get yet the language proficiency certificate, can I still apply for this program or wait until I get it? I would encourage you to start the application process, and you can save the application and not submit it yet. And or you could submit it and then later upload the your language results. And so certainly you can go ahead and apply now. So the next question is, given that the entire course is online, why is there such a disparity between Canadian and international fee? Uh, so that's a good question. I mean, these fees are actually set very similar to the other professional master's programs that we have in forestry. Cecil, do you want to say anything about this?
Yeah, I can understand. I know there's a lot of people on the right now joining us that are not from Canada. These are legal requirements in terms of fee structure. So Canadian students are more heavily subsidized, for example. So their fees will usually be lower than international students. And this is the case for all programs at UBC, but to my knowledge, also actually all programs at other Canadian universities, unfortunately.
Thank you. And John has a question. With the course being 14 months and overlapping 2 years, how does that factor into tuition costs? Would it be considered 2 years worth of study? No, the tuition fee will be divided into 4 equal installments. So it's just the amount for the whole program.
And the
So
good
it'll be
thing is
prorated.
also, oh, sorry, Lee, that there is no, so usually, of course, with on-site courses, there's an extra tuition, a local, I don't know how you would explain it, but like a local fee, but that fee will not be applicable for this online course. So it's just those amounts that were stated before.
Correct, yes. There's usually the student fees is about 1,200 a year. And so students who are, no, the students will not be charged the student fees because they're not going to be physically in Vancouver. So those fees are usually like extended health coverage and the bus pass. So the students in this program will be exempt from those student fees. And are the undergrad faculty requirements set in stone? Would an undergrad from Slaughter School of Business qualify for this program?
Yeah, so that the answer to that is absolutely yes. So again, if an economics or a solid degree could potentially be very relevant, and again, it would be the case then to state that in a motivation letter, like why is this a good mix with urban forestry? And personally, I think it would be really excellent to get people from for example, business backgrounds to join the program.
And Laura has a question. Will a combination of university education and professional experience be considered in special cases?
Yes, the answer again is yes. So we have there's a certain amount of flexibility as we go over people's individual profiles. So we will look at, of course, at degrees, we look at people's professional backgrounds, we look at personal motivation letters, and we will bring that all into the evaluation of individual applicants.
And Heather has a question about, can you give us some examples of possible capstone projects?
Yeah, sure. So one example could be there's let's say a medium-sized city somewhere in Canada that is really eager to develop its very first urban forestry strategy. So one of our graduates could actually, or one of our students could actually help them in doing that. Another project could be a survey or an assessment of, for example, the use of a local park in terms of its health benefits. Yet another one could be developing a green roof strategy or action plan for a city. So basically the sky is the limit as long as there's a clear strategic and leadership dimension to that capstone project. And we will work with individual students to make sure that there's a good match with course objectives, learning aims, as well as with the needs of the client.
Great, thanks. Carol has a question about for reference letters. She's worked in the industry for almost 20 years now, and it may be difficult to get an academic reference. Can it all be professional references? I believe this is something that grad studies, the reference requirement is something the grad studies set. So currently the requirement is we still need an academic reference. However, we may be able to check with grad studies on this as well. Cecil, do you know anything about?
Yeah, and I think given the nature of this program, where we actually are very eager to get people with experience and mature students, I think there are probably ways of getting different types of references in that we would look at. So of course we have to check that we meet the formal requirements, but I would be really in favor of looking at a professional reference then in the first place.
Yeah. So Carol, we can connect actually offline later if you have more questions about this. Please feel free to contact me. And we have a question about regards to workload. Is it full-time, or do you anticipate that participants can continue to work in their current careers? Do we need to be free during the day to learn, or evenings lectures available?
Yeah, so it's of course it's a full-time program in principle, but having said that, we realize that many people have careers, they have lives to do. So there will be definitely an effort to cluster the teaching. Some of the courses we call, some of the lectures and so will be asynchronous, meaning that actually people would not be online live all the time, but actually have a chance to look at some at their convenience. We definitely want to have live interactions, obviously, between students and teachers and within the student groups, but we will really try to reflect the different requirements and time zones of the students. So my gut feeling is, as with our undergrad students, that it's possible to combine this program with doing some kind of job as well.
Thank you. So the next question, I think we touched upon briefly. It's asking about educational background beyond those we mentioned, for instance, business degrees and international development work experience. And will they be transferable? And yes, they will be. Some of the courses may be, well, you can't transfer the courses actually, because these courses are, we can't transfer credits, but the business background will definitely be useful. And then the next question, how many students are being accepted into the first group?
That's a good question. So our initial aim has been to have about between 25 and 30 students maximum in this cohort. So now that we are online, there could be a little bit of flexibility. We don't want to make the group too big either, because we want to make sure we have good learning experiences for everybody. So think about that up to 30 students kind of mark for this cohort.
And to follow up, are we expecting future cohorts to take place on campus?
Yeah, so the program was initially, of course, set up as an on-campus program, but then actually, as we started marketing and getting people's feedback, then actually turned out that the majority of potential students preferred an online program. So I think we'll have to see what the experiences will be, also teaching it online, and it could very well be that we find some kind of hybrid form in the future as well. So this is still, I cannot give you a clear yes or no on that. It's still an option that we will do it on site or on campus. But this will be decided, I would say, within the next year or so.
And then we have another question about CAPSTONE project. Would it be possible to talk to one of the professors to determine its feasibility?
Yes, definitely. So yeah, absolutely. So this will happen. So actually during the first term, so the September to December period, there's an introduction course that will actually let people make a proof of concept or start exploring their capstone projects. And during that period, you will already start working with a mentor, a student or a teacher advisor who will help you to see, is it feasible? Is it something that can be done within the 6 credits of the capstone? Is it something that actually fits into the local client context, etc.? So there will be a really guided process. It's not just sending you off to do something you want to do, but it's really a well-structured capstone learning experience.
And we have a question about the application deadline. Will the deadline for following years also be in March? Currently, all our professional master's programs application deadline is in March for the July intake, just because it takes some time for the adjudication committee to review all the applications. So I believe this is still probably the case right now. And Cecil, do you anticipate any changes?
No, again, I think we usually follow our current procedures, but if we have indications that it could be good to have some flexibility in that, we will of course apply that.
Yeah, and if you have difficulties getting in like a last-minute reference letter or transcript, please feel free to email me as well and let me know. As the next question, I'm curious about how much the program approaches, integrates an equity lens throughout the different courses, especially on the topic of governance. Are there any Indigenous voices that teach or contribute to this program? It's a broad question, but any insight would be helpful.
Yeah, thanks very much for that question. So in general, in our urban forestry teaching at UBC, we have a very strong focus on equity and cultural diversity, etc. So we have, for example, usually people coming in and explaining some of the perspectives from indigenous peoples. And we also look at things like cultural diversity, ethnic diversity in urban forestry. And one of our teachers, Laurie Nesbitt, is actually an expert in this topic. She had her PhD research on this and is very eager to make sure that we cover that well. my own research, my own teaching is also very strongly connected to some of these diversity issues. This also relates to things like gender diversity, gender equality, of course. Yeah, definitely you can expect this to be well covered in the program.
Great. And our next question is, will MUFL students be able to apply for teaching assistant and research assistant positions or similar? I would say this might be a question I have to take offline because I'd have to look into further. Right now, we're having some challenges in paying some of the students who are not physically in Vancouver, just because they need like a social insurance and a work permit. So because it's an online program, our students will not be most likely will not be here. But Cecil, do you see? I'm not sure, like with research assistant positions, if it's possible for them to.
Yes, I would say so. Like with our other programs, so people who are eager to do that, they will of course be able to talk with professors, and there would be opportunities to see if there's, for example, teaching assistant positions. As you say, Lee, I think one of the main limitations will be Canadian labor law. So people would have to be, in principle, be in Canada and fall under the Canadian labor law, I think, as far as I know. In some cases, in research projects, there could be some flexibility to that as well. So I think that option exists. It would just have to be discussed for the individual case.
Yes, and Andrew, feel free to get in touch with me, of course, after the presentation, and we can look further into it. And have I missed any questions? Are there any more? I'm just scrolling down here. Looks like if I have missed any of your questions, feel free to re-enter it in the chat. And we also, I guess we still have some time to go over some questions that we received when people registered for this.
I saw, Lee, one question that people ask, of course, is what are the pros and cons of a start in 2021? So, of course, and we have to be honest about it, you'll be the first cohort, which of course can come with some challenges, but I think also can come with a lot of benefits, because it actually means there will be a lot of focus on this first cohort. Of course, we want to make sure the program gets off to a good start. So we're really building a very strong teaching team to start with that. And of course, also, we don't know for sure that the program will be fully online beyond next year. So for those of you who are in a situation where actually you won't be able to spend a year in Vancouver, this could be a good option to actually enroll in the program.
Thanks, Cecil. I was going to answer a question about whether this experience counts for those who are interested in applying for PR, permanent resident. Because it is an online program, I would believe that it's hard to get. It'll be hard to get a study permit to come to Vancouver for this, unless you're doing a CAPSTONE project that requires you to be in Vancouver. Then, in which case, you'll need a study permit and a co-op work permit. So any questions related to also permanent resident and immigration, we usually ask that you contact International Student Advising, because they have the expertise to advise on those questions as well. And also there's a question about whether or not this program will be eligible for BC Provincial Nominee Program in the near future. At the moment it is not, because it is an online course, and so it's not one of those listed. If it is offered down the road in person, then this is something that we'd have to look into.
I think, Lee, there was also a question, if I remember correctly, about possible RPF, Registered Forestry Professional status. So the program is currently not accredited for that. We are, though, in a constant dialogue with ABCFP, for example, and other organizations to see how our urban forestry programs in general can fit better with future accreditation. So this is an ongoing process, but there's no automatic RPF status connected to this program. We do have that with our Master of Sustainable Forestry program, if I'm correct.
Yes, the MSFM, the Master of Sustainable, that's the only one currently, yes. I'm trying to see if there's any questions that we haven't answered. Do we have any more questions?
There was a very interesting question about the culture that we want to foster. I think that's really important, because we really want to build a very strong culture of inclusiveness, of leadership, of people who are willing to, and this may sound a little bit cheesy, but really to make the world into a better place through green spaces and trees. So we want people, of course, who are ambitious, who are to some extent idealistic, but also realistic in the sense of what can we achieve with our best knowledge. And of course, we want to share that in our cohort and build that strong group feeling of masters in urban forestry leadership that will hopefully take up positions all across the world and really become an institution. And of course, for that, we will need the best of the best students. So I'm really encouraged by some of the people that I've seen are in this session. I think we can be really hopeful there.
There's a question, Cecil, in the chat about can you provide some detail on the motivation letter? Are they pretty flexible on what can be included or should be? And perhaps could you share some recommendation?
Yeah, so I think it's really important. Yeah, we of course we need to get a feeling for who you are as somebody who's interested in urban forestry. So we would like to see, of course, examples of your previous experience, how your education or your current jobs fit into this program, but also about your passions and your interests and why you think that this MUFL program will take you further, and also how you can contribute, of course, to your peers. So really make it, of course, fact-based, but also make sure that your voice comes through and that we can see who you are as an urban forestry professional or somebody with an interest in this field.
And there's another question here about, there seems to be a surge of creative solutions in this space being implemented in various European cities. Will this course look to leverage such global examples, learnings, and practices?
Yeah, definitely. So this is really one of my own really important focuses for this program. So we definitely want to have a global perspective. We want to bring in the best of the best from across the world. As you've seen maybe in the overview of some of the contributors, we already have people from the UK and Sweden, for example, in our teaching team. My experience from Europe is also pretty big. So, and of course, we hope to bring in several students from Europe as well that will actually bring that learning experience as well, as we want with for example, Southeast Asia or Oceania, etc. We want people from Latin America. We definitely want to have an internationally diverse cohort as well.
Sorry, I was muted. We had another question here in the chat. We talked briefly about the positive benefits of providing an online version of this program. What are some of the anticipated downsides of having such an involved and interactive program through an online channel? For example, I can imagine it can be challenging to conduct capstone projects with a European company while I'm based in Vancouver.
Yes, definitely. Of course, there are challenges. We're not going to say that's not the case. I have to say, though, the experiences that we are gaining at the Faculty of Forestry with online teaching are really encouraging. So it turns out that there's a lot of really good tools and ways of making it interactive, of having engaging discussions, even with people sitting in different parts of the world. There will be challenges, but I think that we can work around those. Obviously, we won't, and that's a big downside for all of us, is that we're not sitting in the same room. We're not there physically seeing each other. But that's where we also definitely want to have, at least towards the end of the program, an opportunity to meet each other. But we will definitely bring the best possible learning tools in action to make sure that we make the program as interactive, as engaging as possible, and also make sure you get out there and get assignments where you actually have to go to an urban forestry case and context. So it's not just sitting behind a computer screen all the time, in front of a computer screen all the time.
And when will we be notified of admission? So we usually, if the applications close March 15th, it takes usually a few weeks, a couple of weeks maybe for the committee to review them. And then I guess, Cecil, you'll be meeting with the committee in early April, or?
Yes, definitely. We will do it as soon as we can, of course. We know that these are big steps for people, so we will work hard on our side to make sure this becomes a smooth and fast process.
So probably sometime in April, you'll hear from us by email. We'll send you the admission package with all the information. And you can also set up a Zoom call with Cecil, myself, or anyone if you have any further questions about the admission as well.
Definitely, yeah.
Let's see. And there's a question, oh, there's a few more here. Do you have currently partnerships or relationships with Australian companies or institutions? Will the relationships I can bring be looked upon favorably?
Definitely, absolutely. Australia is one of the places in the world where there's a lot of interesting things happening in this domain, in terms of green infrastructure, for example, in terms of health relations. And there's also some really strong companies and government agencies involved. So we will absolutely make sure that these are part of the program. And the examples you could bring as well will be really beneficial for the whole student cohort as well as for the teaching team.
Great. I'm trying to see if do we have any more questions in? I'm trying to see if we have covered almost all the questions.
I'm just double checking the Excel here as
Yeah,
well.
I know, me too.
Yeah.
I'm very glad to see so many questions here, actually.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
And like I said, we are both available. If after this presentation you still have any questions, feel free to send us an email, and we're happy to chat with you one-on-one.
So there's one question here, Lee, about somebody asked being a practicing arborist. So somebody is out in practice doing a lot of arboriculture work. Definitely this will be an added value because this will give you the opportunity to work more from a strategic leadership perspective, to bring in your arboriculture knowledge into this broader field of urban forestry and green infrastructure. So I think it's actually a really nice combination to have an arboriculture background, maybe a certification, and then combine this with a more leadership-based program like this one.
Thanks, Cecil. I see another question here from Taylor. How realistic is it to work full-time as a student in this program? And what's typical among your master's students?
This is, of course, a very a tricky question because, in principle, as I said, it's a full-time program, so we should not encourage people to maybe work full-time. But experience shows that it depends very much on the individual, depends very much on the type of job, depends, for example, on being able to use your capstone as part of your work. Maybe you are involved in urban forestry strategy process, and actually you can bring that into a learning environment. So I think there are definitely opportunities to do so. And I said we're not going to spread out our courses over 16 hours. So we're definitely going to try to cluster and offer opportunities for people to take things, for example, in the evenings if they can. And of course, here we also have to take into account that people will be in many different parts of the world, we hope. So work is definitely a possibility, and many of our students in the undergrad program as well as in the grad program combine their work with combine their studies with work. But then, of course, you have to see what is realistic. We cannot tell you automatically that a full-time job and a full-time program will work for everybody.
Yeah, I can say that in the other Masters of Geomatics for Environmental Management program, our students are in that program full-time, and I don't believe they're working full-time because of the demanding workload for that program. So let's see. I see we're at the end of our session here. If maybe a few more minutes, if we don't have any more questions, we'll probably wrap up this presentation.
Yeah, people are very welcome, as said, to just email us or reach out. We're eager to get a good start with this, and we want to have some good students. And judging on the questions, there's some really motivated people there. So we realize it's a commitment in terms of funding, in terms of course, time commitment as well. But we can promise you that we will do our very best to offer a really exciting, high-level program that will be unique. It's a world-leading program in terms of leadership in our industry. So I hope to have a chance to work with many of you.
Yeah, and thank you again for joining us this morning. We're happy to see the turnout, and you can also follow us on our social media on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at UBC Forestry. And once again, thank you for joining us this hour, and we hope to hear from you and review some of your applications.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening, afternoon, and maybe happy Thanksgiving to some of you as well.
Thank you.